Bezat Hashem, Hanukkah is coming, and there is one subject that is of common interest by the Sfaradim, especially by Sfaradim who go to Ashkenazi institutions, and there is a very big difference, a glaring difference between the Sfaradim and the Ashkenazim in how to light Hanukkah candles. And there's many different ramifications. And not only that, today we're going to discuss a very fundamental mahloket between Maran Rav Ovadia Yosef and Rabbi Shalom Messas on the obligation of every single person, if they want to light a Hanukkah menorah, are they allowed? So this has as much relevance to it. So we're going to really discuss three questions. The first question is that does every single individual in the house, if they want to light, are they allowed to? Number two, also by children, does it work that way? And number three, let's say a child is in a yeshiva or in a seminary or in a dorm. Does he also light a separate menorah? And then we're going to see what happens to children who are coming also for Shabbat and they're part of the house. Should they also light? What should they do? What can they do? We're going to see that there's many different opinions. But in order to understand it properly, we have to go to the root of the matter, where the source is. And from there, Be'ezat Hashem, we're going to build and see where things fall into place. I wanted to give first a little bit of introduction from the words of Rav Yitzhak Sagi Nahor. He was a Rishon in the time of the Ravad. He was a Rishon in the time of the Ravad, and he wrote that why is it that it says in the Gemara that somebody who's careful and Ner Chanukah, he's going to have children who are Talmidei Chachamim. Why specifically Ner Chanukah? So he says like this, because Ner Chanukah, it's a mitzvah derabanan, and there is not a lot of clarity in all of the different details. So somebody, he makes an effort to understand exactly the diuk and shel dvarim, what he's supposed to do. He's going to have with that zechut, because it shows that he's machmir on that. Hashem is going to give him certain talmidei chachamim. And I want to mention as well that it is known that Hilchot Chanukah, out of all the other halachot, have the least clarity in what you're supposed to do lema'aseh. When you're traveling, when you leave, after you leave. My friend, I once spoke to people who used to learn with Rebbe Yashiv about these halachot, and he mentioned that there is a big lack of clarity. You'll see in Eretz Yisrael, some people light inside the house, some people light outside the house, some people light next to the door, some people light in the hallway, some people light by the window. And until today, it's a subject. There's not a unanimous opinion and conformity that everybody just does one way. It seems to be that there's many different approaches. So over here is no different. I think that's what came out. Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it's Rabbi Yashiv, and they tried to destroy. One of the reasons it's given is because they tried to destroy our Torah Sheba'al Peh, the Yevanim. So by Nerot Chanukah, by learning the Hilchot Chanukah, since there is no clarity, we have to discuss it more and more and more and more. Torah Sheba'al Peh is being learned. So that's obviously a rectification and a tikkun for what the Yevanim tried to take away from our Torah Sheba'al Peh. So with that introduction, let's see. The Gemara says the following: Tanu Rabbanan, mitzvat Hanukkah ner ish ubeto. The mitzvah of Hanukkah is ner ish ubeto. What does ner ish ubeto mean? Ner echad bechol laila. One candle every single night. Vechol bnei beto sagidu b'ner echad. And Rashi says one candle is enough for every person. Now, Mehadrin, Mehadrin, that means the next level, ner echad echol echad ve'echad. One ner to everybody. So let's say there's 5 people in a family, everybody lights one candle. Mehadrin mina mehadrin, the best thing is that Bet Shammai Omrim, you go from 8 the first day, 7 the 7th day, etc., etc. You go down. And Bet Hillel says, Mosif veholech, you go up, right? The first day 1, second day 2, third day 3. Now Tosfot says that why don't you do So Tosfot says, when we say me'adrin min ha'minadrin, it's not building on the mehadrin. It's not saying that every person should add on one candle. It's that it's going back on mitzvat ner Chanukah, ner ishu bito, the household, the main household only lights one candle. And me'adrin min ha'minadrin is that the main household will light one, that's 2 the second day, 3 the third day, 4 the fourth day. Why? Why can't you have everybody light their own menorah and they're adding on days? Says Tosfot, because then you're not going to know what day it is. You're going to see a bunch of candles, you're not going to know what day it is. Right? And therefore, that's the halakha that me'adrin min ha'minadrin, one household lights one candle the first night, 2 nirot the second night, and so on and so forth. The Rambam doesn't understand the Gemara this way. The Rambam says in Perek Daled, the Ilchot Chanukah, he says the following: Kama nerot hu madlik? How many lights does he light on Chanukah? Mitzvata sheyeh kol bayit vebayit madlik ner echad, ben shu anshe bayit merubin, ben shu ela adam echad. The mitzvah is that every single person in the house lights one candle, whether you have a lot of people, whether you don't. Okay, on that part he agrees. Mehader min ha-mitzvot, it says the balabait lights like the amount of people that there are in the house. Okay, so let's say there are 7 people in the house, like 7 candles. 10 people in the house, 10 candles.
Right, the ikar mitzvah is only one.
Right, the main mitzvah is one. Ve'amehader yoter al then somebody wants to do even better. ועושה מצווה מן המובחר, he wants to do the best mitzvah, מדליק נר לחוד אחד בלילה הראשון, מוסיף הולך בכל לילה, בלילה נר אחד. In other words, that when he has 10 people, so he's going to light the first night 10 candles, second night 20 candles, third night 30 candles, fourth night 40 candles, and so on and so forth. Which is basically, this is the minhag of the Ashkenazim, right? They go with the Rambam, which is interesting. We should usually, the Sfaradim, we should go with the Rambam, but Maran was posek like Tosfot. Why is it over here? Could be that this was the Rosh and this was the accepted practice. So in other words, over here, the Sfaradim, they go like the Tosfot and the Rosh, and Ashkenazim go like the Rambam. That's what came out.
Are you saying that the Ashkenaz would light 10 candles?
Well, if there's 10 people in the house, so each one is going to light
separated.
Yeah.
Each counts that they end up with 80 lights, but they do it separately.
Right.
That's another point. But, yeah.
Right. No, so let's concentrate for the Minhag Sparadim. That's how the Shulchan Aruch is posek in Siman Tafresh Ayin Aleph. He says that the mitzvah Ner Chanukah is Ner Ishu Beto, and Me'adrin is that the Balabait lights every single night, 1, the second night 2, the third night 3, but only the Balabait lights. Now, what happens for everybody else in the house? So you have another halakha in Siman Tafresh Ayin Zayin called Achsenai, a guest. There's much discussion on a guest. There's one little halakha in Shulchan Aruch, but Rabbi Nidal's already looking at me. It's a whole yam. It's a whole different discussion. What is this halakha of a guest? So it says, Achsenai she'en madlikin alav bebeto צריך לתת פרוטה לבעל הבית להשתתף עמו בשמן של נר חנוכה. A guest that is in the house of the בעל הבית, he should give a little bit towards the oil, and that's it. Okay, simple enough. That Rav Ovadia Yosef brings a question: what happens with bachurim that are learning out of town? What do they do? So, he was one of the first ones that discussed this question because of bachurim learning outside. I mean, there was we're going to see there was many sources beforehand, but in our generation, he brought it. He really brought it to light. And in Yechavedati has a tshuva in Chelik Vav Siman Men Gimel, I believe. And over there, he brings the Machzor Vitri and a lot of other poskim that the Machzor Vitri, and they were in the time of Rashi, that say that bachurim, they don't have to light because they fulfill the mitzvah with their parents, because their parents somchim al shulchan avim. Up to a point, Rav Ovadia was of the opinion that even a bachur is living in Chutz La'aretz, the parents are living in Chutz La'aretz, and he's in Eretz Yisrael, and the time difference is 7 hours, as we know, but the parents are lighting for him, so he doesn't make a bracha living in yeshiva. That was the opinion of Rabbi Yosef. And many bachurim who follow that, Sfaradim bachurim who go to Eretz Yisrael, even though their parents didn't light yet. these boys didn't fulfill the mitzvah. Nobody else doing it for them. He says no, they're yotzei. They're part of their parents' house. Many poskim argue on this. I personally asked Rabbi Tzina Bar Shaul, and Rabbi Tzina Bar Shaul said that if it's a time difference, then you don't fulfill the mitzvah with your parents, and you have to light with a bracha. Rabbi Shalom Messas had an even further opinion, we'll call it, to the left or to the right, whatever you consider the left or the right, and he was of the opinion like this. It says in the Ramah Seif Gimel like this. יש אומרים, the Shulchan Aruch says, some say, שאף על פי שמדליקין עליו בתוך ביתו, אם הוא במקום שאין ישראל מדליק, אם הוא במקום שישראל מדליק בברכות, if he's in a place where there's no Yisrael, madlik bebrachot, he should light the Nerot Chanukah. And there's discussion why. At least you can make the Birkat Haro'eh, you can make the bracha of Shasa Nisim on those candles. But the Rama adds on the following. Now, person has to see Nerot. Now, even if he's by Jews, and he sees Nerot anyways, אם רוצה להחמיר על עצמו ולהדליק בפני עצמו, מדליק ומברך עליהם וכן נוהגים. If he wants to be machmir and light on his own, he's allowed to.
Okay.
He's saying anybody. It seems to be that he's talking about anyways. Anybody. And he says like this, even though your wife is lighting for you at home, nevertheless, mikol makom im rotze leadlik be'atzmo bichlal mehadrin hu. If he wants to light, right, there's something called mehadrin that everybody could light on their own, right? We do mehadrin mina mehadrin, and the balabait lights one for the whole family. But let's say somebody chooses, he has an opt-out clause. He says, I don't want to be part of the household. I want to light on my own. Says Rabbi Shalom Messas, from this Ramah and this Magen Avraham, why not? You're allowed to say, I don't want to be yotzei with my parents' house, and I could light on my own. Now, Rabbi Shalom wrote this Teshuvah in Tivuat Shamesh, which was one of his earlier editions, where he wrote it in Morocco already, where he had a discussion with Rabbi Habib Toledano. He wrote this in Tivuat Shamesh Orachaim Siman Zayin, and he discusses this at length after he brings this Ramah down and the Magen Avraham and a bunch of other poskim that say that if a person wants to fulfill the mehadrin, that means if he wants to say that I don't want to fulfill the mitzvah with the household, rather I want to be matik on my own, I'm allowed. So he says like this: not only by a bachur that he's living somewhere else, he's allowed to do that. But even if a person is in his own house and they want to opt out and they want to say we want to light on our own, he should be allowed to. Now the only problem we said from Tosfot is that Neri Shubito you light one and it's only one. Now why does it only light one? Tosfot says because of Heker, because you have to know the amount of candles it is. So I don't think he doesn't address that, and I think that the answer is that as long as it's further enough spaced apart that somebody from far could tell the amount of nerot, that's going to be enough. So according to this, according to Rabbi Shalom Messas, a child who's going to come at home is going to say, I want to light my own nerot Chanukah. According to Rabbi Shalom Messas, he's totally allowed. Not only that, he says that when he used to be living by his father's house, he would light his own Chanukah, even though his father was going to light afterwards. But since he had to go already to teach his Talmidim, says Rabbi Shalom Messas, so he would light beforehand. He didn't fulfill the mitzvah with his father, so it could be already he was married and he had his own. I think that's it sounds like that he was already married. But according to his opinion, even if he's not married, even if he's somech al shulchan avim, but he wants to opt out and fulfill part of the mehadrin, he's allowed to. He brings a couple of examples to this. The Shulchan Aruch in Siman Vav says the following: by Birkot HaShachar, every single person has an obligation to light to say Birkot HaShachar, right? So even though a person is able to fulfill the mitzvah and the bracha through somebody else, nevertheless, the Shulchan Aruch writes that יש נוהגים להמתין לברך על נטילת ידם עד מנוגדסת ומסתדרים אותה עם שאר הברכה. No, I'm sorry. And nevertheless, in the Shulchan Aruch it writes that every single person is allowed to do their Birkot HaShachar on their own, and that's what we do. Well, why don't we fulfill it with one person? It says there's no reason to fulfill it with one person whenever every person is able to do it on his own. And he says even though the Knesset HaGdolah brings by Nerot Chanukah that if a person wants to fulfill the Mehadrin and say I don't want to fulfill the mitzvah with my parents, he's not allowed to because he's causing a bracha she'ena tzricha. We see from here not that way. We see also why aren't I causing a bracha she'ena tzricha, a unnecessary bracha every single morning that I wake up and I say the brachot on my own, even though I could fulfill it with let's say one person doing it in shul. We don't say that. Same thing too over here. We don't do that, and so too the minhag is going to be whenever somebody is in such a is in such a situation that he's able to do the bracha on his own, or let's say everybody's drinking coffee and tea together. Do we say, okay, only one bracha, let's one make? No, everybody downstairs right now, everybody made their separate bracha.
But the lighting of candles on Shabbat,
yeah,
for a woman,
right?
even if you have guests, really, the choice is for only one
So
person.
it could, on Shabbat it's a little different, because on Shabbat, Maran holds that you can't make a bracha if there's already light in the house called Tosefet Or, adding on light. So it could be because of that, even though there are some opinions that hold yes, but it could be because of that, only one person in the household lights. Now there is one caveat over here. So
another difference is that the Shabbat candles, you can allow to enjoy the light, to read or something. But
right.
Menorah is allowed.
Right. No, on the contrary.
No. Yes, Menorah.
You're not allowed to use.
But that's why
And
that's why
right, the Shamash you're allowed to.
Yes,
right.
because
right.
if you study or if you
right. No, that's a good point.
Yeah.
The Shamash you're allowed.
Yeah.
No, you're right. So getting back to our thing that Rav Ovadia Yosef has a long teshuvah, and he says that a person is not allowed to fulfill is not allowed to have to light his own candle, because once the balabait already lit, he was motzi everyone, and it sounds like he doesn't have a chiyuv anymore. Rabbi Shalom Messas says, what do you mean you don't have a chiyuv anymore? Still, there's a chiyuv if you want to fulfill the ma'adrim, to opt out and to be able to do that. Everybody thinks, according to Sfaradim, you're never allowed to light more than one. That Rabbi Shalom proves that's not true. It's not written anywhere like that. On the contrary, a person who wants to fulfill ma'adrim, most poskim say that there's no problem whatsoever. Now, the only difference is going to be is that the Bet Yosef discusses, let's say a woman wants to do her own Ner Chanukah and not to be yotzei by the man. Over there's a discussion between the Bet Yosef and the Trumot HaDeshen, whether ishto kegufo or not. Whether a woman is attached to her husband's chiyuv, she can't detach herself. On that, Rabbi Shalom says to be machmir, maybe it's Chelek Bet, in Shemesh Umagen Chelek Bet, he discusses that, I believe it's Siman Gimel. He says in Shemesh Umagen Chelek Bet, which was the Shirot Shuvot he wrote in Yerushalayim already, and in response to a lot of people attacked him on Shuvah that are in Shemesh, so that his response in Chelek Bet, he has two Teshuvot over there. Chelek Dalet, I think he speaks about it again, but in Chelek Bet he says that a person is allowed to light if they want. It's just by Ishto, his wife, since it could be it's one unit, then she shouldn't separate herself, and it could be it wouldn't help separating herself, according to some opinions.
The other way around. Like you have the wife is doing it and the husband's by a wedding at a
I don't know. It could be not.
I think
it could be it's the same
could be
thing.
right, but I'm saying could he opt out? It would be the same issue.
I think some halakha there, if the husband is sick and it's the bed,
right.
you have to say the beracha and she
right.
go and light the candle.
Right. So I'm not sure about that part. I'm not sure. You're right. You have a good point. I don't know what would be the halakha then. What would be the halakha then if a woman is able to, she lights, would the husband be able to opt out? These are all questions that end up on Chanukah, but al kol panim, we discussed today the fundamental machloket between Rav Ovadia Yosef. If you want to see where Rav Ovadia writes it, it's in Shirot Shuvot Yechavedat Chelek Vav Siman Mem Gimel, and also in the Hazon Ovadia on Chanukah. After what he discusses that the Bachurim are not allowed to light on their own, he says, Omnam Yedidenu Agon Rabbi Shalom Messas, not that way, but he says, according to the poskim that I proved, and some of the, what does he say, the poskim that he proves, the Marachzor Vitri and others, they say that, well, a Bachur who's going in somebody else's house, he's not, he doesn't light, he's yotzei with his parents. So Rabbi Shalom says, yes, I agree, if he's yotzei the mitzvah, but if he wants to light, he could be Bechal Na'adrin, there's no problem whatsoever. Okay, that's more or less the discussion. There's more to discuss. But for now, that'll do.